Hi. The film I'll be talking about today is The King of Comedy. This film was directed by Martin Scorsese and stars Robert De Niro and Jerry Lewis. This film was released in 1982. And before we get started, I just have to acknowledge I've been to the doctor today. This is not some bizarre fashion statement, so just wanted to get the elephant out in the room. That's what's going on here. This film really dealt with what our society was turning into slowly at the time. And I say slowly because this film did come out in 1982, before reality TV had taken over. And a couple years after this film came out, Rebecca Schaefer, who was on a popular sitcom at the time, got murdered at her own house by an obsessed fan. And none of these things have happened yet when this film is made. It was as if Scorsese had looked into a crystal ball and knew where we were headed just by observing the changes in society, the unhealthy obsession that we all have with being famous, with those that are famous. And what this film also spoke to was how that line starts to get blurred between being famous/infamous. It's not always about being recognized because you have talent. It's simply about being recognized. And I had never really thought about this film, explored it in a way that was interesting. And I kind of, even in my own life, can think back to being at football games or basketball games if they were at a professional venue, and when the camera would come around, or if they put you on and how everybody got so waving their hand. We hadn't done anything, but we saw ourselves up there. And that seemed to do something to us. It seemed to bring something out in us. And none of us doing that at the time, nobody looked at us weird for doing it. It was understandable. Well, of course, you're on camera. Why not? This is kind of your chance to feel like you're famous for a minute too. What it means to us. We're like the little baby birds waiting for the mama bird to drop the worm. And it's like, that's kind of where we are today with Facebook and Instagram and how many followers and how many clicks you've gotten and how many likes and all that stuff. We're a slave to it. It's as if it has become medicinal. We can't live without it. And the character in this film, Rupert Pupkin, embodies that. He has no life. He is the definition of, a sycophant. He just is a delusional, out of touch with reality guy who is muddling through, lives with his mother, has no real prospects, is not and everything in his life is tied to fantasy. He, in his mind, is on par with these people, like Jerry Langford, who's played by Jerry Lewis in the film. And Jerry Lewis gives one of his better performances in this film. He plays the part of the Johnny Carson-like talk show host perfectly. He hits just the right note. And then when he's off camera, Jerry Lewis always had a dark side to him, and many people have spoken to it. You can go on YouTube and look at the last interview he did in his 90s with Time Magazine, and you'll see that dark side I'm talking about. He did not suffer a fool, and if he didn't feel like acting a certain way, he didn't. And that comes across in this film. He lets the side of him that's not a clown show through. And it also gives us a certain perspective on what celebrities themselves go through. We always want more from them. It's not enough that we just get to turn the TV on and be entertained by them. We want more. We need more. An autograph. This, that. It's never quite enough. We want to know who they're dating. We want to know this. We'll buy a magazine if it spreads rumors about them. Product endorsement. Political candidates. It becomes this bizarre thing when just because they're on television, we act like they're not normal people anymore, that they're exalted, they're above us. And this film does a good job at showing what that does to somebody like a Jerry Langford and what it's like for somebody like a Rupert Pupkin who suffers from this syndrome. And it does it in a way that is so eerie for a film that is also funny. And the eeriness is how much we see of society today reflected in Rupert Pupkin. This zeal that he had for being famous, he will not stop until he can touch that world. And it doesn't seem to matter what he has to do to get there. And in one of the scenes when it shows him at his house, we see that he's even set up this studio audience. And it's as if he performs, and in his mind, he's performing for this crowd. It shows that he has a laugh track at his house, and you hear his mother yelling, "Rupert, what are you doing?" "Mom, be quiet, I'm waiting." She's like, "You're gonna miss the bus." "Mom." And the mom is Scorsese's mother, by the way. She's the one that's always yelling at him. And when we see this, it is so eerie. It's cringy. But now, when you look at society, you realize we've become a society of Rupert Pupkins, where shows like Pimple Popper get good ratings. The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, somebody goes on there, gets drunk enough, makes a big enough scene, they might actually get their own TV show. When a girl goes on the Dr. Phil show and says, catch me outside, she's going to be big in no time. There was a guy who was on the news when he was saying, hide your kids, hide your wife. Took off. It went viral, as they say, and he's everywhere. Was there any talent there? No. Didn't matter. And that's the scary thing. It's not because they're good at something. It's really just because they're loud. They lack self-respect. They have no dignity. They're willing to do just about anything as long as that camera remains on them. And I think of the Haley Welch girl who gives that answer, and overnight, her life changes. You see it on t-shirts. She's going to get a podcast. The Rolling Stone saying she's like this generation's Dolly Parton. For a drunken night out, talking to a guy who's asking her a sexually graphic and giving an answer like that, she's now going to be not just infamous, but in our culture today, famous. And you have to say, is there even a difference today between being famous and infamous? And at the time when this movie was made, there was. We felt sorry for Rupert because he wanted so badly to be the Jerry Langford type, the guy who had his own TV show, who interviewed celebrities and walked into a room and had a command presence. But what's sad is today, it doesn't even seem as though we aspire for something, not that the end-all be-all is having your own talk show or being on a network, but we don't even aspire for the success that would lead to the fame. And now fame is attainable in a cheaper way. And it's diminished everything. We were once a society where if you said, who's the it girl, or like what's the standard of elegance and beauty, a lot of people would think of that like Audrey Hepburn photo in Breakfast at Tiffany's. It's kind of sad when we go from that to Hawk Tuah. And that's where we are. And this movie feels as though it was warning us that we, as a society, needed to get a grip on ourselves. That we were no longer just worshiping talent. We were simply worshiping fame. It wasn't that we just wanted to say thank you, we appreciate it, we love your work. We want to get near them because by being near them, our stock rises. We become a little bit better. And reality TV, social media, made those pathways for so many much more attainable. We live in a world now where people who started in film, TV, they're doing reality TV shows. They're putting their family out there. Everything's for sale now. There is no private moment anymore. And it makes me think of a scene in Saving Private Ryan, which is different from this film, but where he says to Tom Hanks, I have a certain memory I go to when things get bad. And he tells him about the night with his brothers. And he says to Tom Hanks, what about you? He said, I think about my wife in the rose garden, or rose bushes, I should say. And Matt Damon said, well, tell me a little bit about that. And he said, no, that's just for me. Nothing is just for anybody anymore. Private moments don't exist. And I remember seeing Bob Costas, who I think you always come away from smarter after listening to him talk. And he hosted a talk show at one time, but was probably best known for his work in sports. And he was talking about how the sports culture had devolved to where it was more about end zone celebrations than what he did to actually even get into the end zone. And I thought he said it beautifully when he said, in today's culture, calling attention to yourself is confused with style, and obnoxiousness is confused with wit. And it seems as though we're not only still going in that direction, we got our foot on the gas. And when I watch this film and I see this character, you see such a sad, lonely, deranged guy who thinks if he can just get his 15 minutes, he'll be okay. You see the Jerry Langford character who, even though he's famous, lives kind of an isolated life, lives in a penthouse apartment, and it seems that it's just he and his dog, and he can't really get out amongst the public much. He does his show, he goes home. And how it's a lot of people looking for fulfillment in places where they will never find it. And I can't really think of another film. I know recently they did The Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, and it dealt with someone who felt as an outcast in society and then handles it. But to be honest with you, it was a pale replication of the King of Comedy. And De Niro plays this character with such an earnest quality, and your heart breaks for him. There's a scene where he goes to the building where Jerry Langford works, and he gives them some of his material. And she said, and finally she says, okay, we'll take it, to get rid of him. He shows back up, she comes back, it's good, work on it, sharpen it, then maybe you can get on the show with Jerry. He doesn't accept that. And he says, are you speaking for Jerry? Because, we know each other. We're friendly. He met him one night, stalking him in a limousine, and gets in the car. And to him, they're like this. And he's had numerous conversations up here with him. And she said, yes, I'm speaking for Jerry. And that scene is so hard to watch someone realize their whole life is an illusion. Their delusions, their relationship with reality, or their delusional relationship with reality, is the only thing that makes reality bearable for them. And seeing him face that truth that you're not wanted here. You're not, and he's in that office, but you're never getting back there where we are. Sorry. And she tries to put it as delicately as she can. And it goes in here and out there. And while some of the scenes in the film are funny, there's so many that are eerie. And there's one scene in particular where, and what's interesting to me about this scene is it came from a real story that Jerry Lewis told, where he's walking the streets of New York, and he passes this woman, and she goes, Jerry Langford, I'm such a big fan. And he goes, thank you. And, I appreciate it. And she said, could you come here? I have my son on the phone. He'd love to speak to you. He said, no, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm late. And she said, I hope you get cancer. Somebody said that to Jerry Lewis in Vegas when they were speaking to him, telling him how great he was. He said, well, I'm sorry, I got to get on stage. She said, could you just speak? And he said, I can't. They're calling for him. She said, I hope you get cancer. It went from you're the second coming to you might as well die. And he knew the fragility of the relationship that he had with the public, the distortion of it. How as much joy as it can bring you changes like that. And when it goes, and it doesn't come back. That's why you have to have something more. And we see Rupert, who thinks that if he could just have this man's life, he's got everything. Because this guy's what? Famous. Is there anything better in our society? And the later part of the film, he and Sandra Bernhard, the other obsessed fan, kidnap Jerry Lewis, hold a gun to his head, and they basically force their way onto The Tonight Show. And when you watch the film, an interesting sidebar is one of the guys who plays the producer of the show in the film is Fred DeCordova, who really worked for Johnny Carson. Kind of adds a layer of, realism to the scene. And he eventually gets his chance to go on TV and give that monologue. And it ends with us showing us, the viewer, that he ends up serving time in prison and, but he becomes this sensation. And the public is waiting for his release, and he's going to become the new big thing. Now, in 1982, you watch that and say, it's a little much. That would never happen. Today, I don't see how it couldn't happen. It has happened. Remember in the early 90s, Joey Buttafuoco? I think they tried to give him his own talk show. Flav having a dating show. Fear Factor, where people are eating cockroaches. The Jerry Springer Show, Maury Povich, where they do nothing but take paternity tests. A guy who simply talks to a reporter and says something insane or gives a profane answer to a question. Then let's put his face on a t-shirt and sell as many as we can. And the sad thing is, if you have no self-respect or dignity, it seems the sky's the limit. It was for Rupert Pupkin in this film. And as we can see right now, it is for a lot of others that are just chasing that drug, that fame. And I apologize because I know I've kind of gotten off on a tangent here lecturing, but that's what this film did to me when I saw it recently. I normally, I've done a film by a different director each video so far, but this film, when I saw it again recently, it stuck with me and I had to talk about it. And I just hope that we as a society can go back to admiring talent more than bravado. And maybe we can get there again. But the future is a scary one, it seems. On that note, until next time, thanks.